Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. This webinar is for August 2025 and we're going to be talking about all things IT asset management and green IT. So I remember when we first started in ITAM back in like the 2010s and later, green IT was kind of like this bundled definition that was basically just making sure that organizations were using their technology, their equipment in an environmentally friendly way, being a bit more self-conscious about their consumption and their usage and how that impacts the planet. That's evolved a lot over the last few years. We've had the introduction of things like green ops, which is really cool, green software as well, and the whole green IT concept just keeps growing, very much like ITAM, but keeps growing as the world basically becomes more environmentally conscious. And obviously a lot of things are changing in technology with moving to the cloud, people taking things out of their own data centers and moving them into other environments. So we're going to have a look all about the original green IT, how that has expanded, how IT asset management plays a key role in that as well, and how we can all work together so that we can do better for our planet and support organizations in their green IT, environmental goals, ESG, sustainability, etc. objectives. So first things first, let's have a look back at what green IT originally was really looking at. And it was ensuring that you're practicing environmentally friendly computing. We mentioned before about the green emissions, about the carbon emissions, electricity consumption, etc. And green IT was really looking at you using environmentally friendly computing in a way that doesn't disrupt your business, but also helps the planet. Which is a fine balance. It really was a fine balance beforehand. And actually one key bit of information which we'll show in a slide later on is in the UK in particular for hardware, whenever you used to go around an electronics store, fridges, freezers, ovens, even desktops, monitors, etc. They used to have a sticker on it for energy efficiency ratings. And I'll show you an example of that in a few slides. But it goes to show how conscious we are on how much energy is being consumed by things, in that whole rating scale got revamped a few years ago. So previously, if you thought you were buying something that was an A in the energy efficiency rating back in 2010, now that might actually be an F on the new scale. So something that we thought was being energy efficient and environmentally friendly computing with the monitors and desktops in the mid 2010s, now not so much, as things have evolved and grown. And it's really an interesting, I urge you, if you have a look at your Energy Star, your energy consumption matrices that are provided, have a look and see how they've changed over the years. Because our technology has evolved, because we're getting more green IT and environmentally friendly, especially in the computing standpoint, but also even things like fridges, freezers, washing machines, etc. They're all changing. So have a look. It is actually genuinely quite interesting how that matrix has changed, and what used to be considered an A, green, this is really eco-friendly, now is an F, and oh no, you can't have that, that's really bad. So have a look. It's also an incentive to encourage organizations to contribute towards those harmful emissions towards the planet. And you know about all of this, global warming. There's a lot in the news going on about, the doomsday clock and how close we are to, doomsday, seconds away and all of that kind of stuff. And green IT really is trying to help reduce the emissions that we're doing through the new world that is the amount of offices and buildings, electricity consumption, data centers, everything like that. It really is trying to help make sure that we're reducing those carbon emissions, whether that's through changing technologies or just being a bit more self-aware and self-conscious. So green IT initially started promoting virtualization and also cloud technologies to replace those physical hardwares in the data center. And originally that looked like a really good idea, very much like organizations thought moving to the cloud and data centers that weren't physically on site for them, virtualizing, moving into the cloud was a good thing from a financial standpoint. As time evolves, as technology evolves, and as we start seeing how much consumption these data centers are actually taking and the rising costs, that there's that disparity now on, is this actually a good idea, not only from a cost perspective, but from a green perspective as well. Obviously, these large cloud providers like your Amazons, your Googles, your Oracles, etc., Microsoft, they are going to have probably better methods and means and processes for using green energy in being able to power those data centers using renewable sources, etc., compared to an organization that's in an office block in a large city somewhere. But still, it's, if you look into data centers and how much energy they consume, how much water they're consuming, what they're pumping out, yeah, it's surprising on, just still how unenergy efficient and green IT and sustainable they really are. And of course, finally, something that's still very relevant today and something that we focus on a lot in IT asset management, and that's ensuring that the hazardous waste from electronic components is destroyed and recycled correctly. How do we do that? Correct. IT asset disposition, ITAD, which looks at that whole end of life process, looks at recycling, making sure nothing goes to landfill, all the harmful components of any form of IT equipment are dealt with appropriately following local laws and regulations, that nothing does go and harm the environment. A lot of ITAD providers now are also looking at being carbon neutral, carbon negative even, and also looking at their own operations and how they work, and looking at electronic vehicles for collections and transportation, stuff like that. So yeah, that area has really grown a lot since the original green IT methodology and concept was coming about. And you'd hear a lot about green IT and organisation goals and objectives and being more sustainable and planting more trees and all of that kind of stuff. But it really has evolved a lot over the last 10 years or so. So let's have a look at some of the pros then for green IT. And of course, in the long run, one of the main driving points was looking at saving money and financials. Using cleaner energy, more renewable energy was at the time, again, like I said, the world has changed a lot since the original green IT kind of mantra came out. I'm sure you know everything that's going on in the world, but it was looking at being able to save money in the long run. Again, thinking about things like turning the lights off when you leave a building. Back in the 2010s, back in my day, a lot of organizations and offices didn't have automatic motion censored lights, for example. So if you left something on overnight, that was emissions, that was cost, that was a complete waste of energy, time, money, resource, everything, leaving those kind of things on. And obviously technology has evolved a lot. You've got motion censored lights in office now, but things like that, it was really could save a lot of money and was just things that weren't really being considered, but they are a lot more now. Less pollution emitted by the organisation as well, if you're looking to follow a green IT methodology. And you can use this to equate to how many trees you've saved or planted and your carbon emissions. And there's so many reports now that you can look at on your emissions, the electricity being used, how much that's costing, what the actual carbon emissions are, the electricity consumption. Like I said, you can get all of that data in reports now, which was a bit harder to get back in the day. Another thing that was a big pro for green IT and a very big relation to ITAM is less electronic waste through IT asset disposition, recycling, resale, etc. I think the resale element of ITAD and green IT, looking at the sustainability, is a lot easier to do nowadays with certain asset types. I mean, you look back again, monitors, it was very obvious that a monitor was old because it was a lot thicker, it was a lot bigger, it was a lot wider, it was a lot heavier, used a lot more energy. Nowadays, I'm looking at my monitor here behind me, for example. I brought that 5-6 years ago and it still looks like a monitor that you'd buy in the shops now. Laptops now, they look a lot more like a laptop you'd still buy now, even if it's 5 years old. So that device has become end of life for your organization, could still have a life elsewhere. And it's not that stigma around it anymore of going, oh, this is a really old device. Like, it's really chunky, it's really heavy, it's really big, it's really ugly. There's not that anymore. And I think you can even look outside of IT and technology and look at cars. And 10-year-old cars nowadays don't look as old and as tatty and as rattly as they used to. I remember when I first used my mum's car when I first learned to drive, and that was 11 years old, and you could tell it was 11 years old because the styling, the technology, everything within those cars had evolved so much. Whereas now, 10-year-old cars still have a lot of the technology and features that new cars have. And it's the same with our IT equipment. It has a lot of the same features. It can still support the latest operating systems, the latest software. So we're doing a lot more in reducing that electronic hardware waste, a lot more. And an overall goal is to be more sustainable within IT, using less emissions, less energy, making sure that we are being a bit more self-conscious, self-aware of exactly what we're doing to the planet with all of the technology that we're using, and how that we can make subtle changes as corporate organizations with our offices, with the hardware that we're providing, the software, etc., to have that wider impact on saving the cheerleader and saving the planet. Whoever remembers Heroes, the series back in the day. And yeah, I mean, a lot of sustainability is being pushed on us everywhere in our day-to-day lives. Recycling at home with everything that you do with your packaging, electric cars being a mandate, for example, in the UK in like 2030, I think it is. There's a lot of push on, we need to do something here to help support the planet, and actually we can do a lot within our technology infrastructure as well. And finally, one of the big reasons for Green IT, I remember, was a lot of public relations, a lot of good PR, especially in the 2010s and the early 2020s, was a lot of, okay, how can we put this into our reporting? How can we share this with the public? How can this impact our share price? How can this impact our customer trust and customer relationship and stuff like that? So if we're showing that we're being green, if we're showing that we're being sustainable, we're being, thinking about all the social changes that are going on, how does that impact us, our brand awareness as a business? And the IT side of that played a lot of role in doing that. I remember being asked to do reporting when we changed monitors from an energy efficiency rating of D to A. What was the impact of that? When we implement ITAD in organisations, when we get that first year's report, what does that mean from a carbon emissions? What does that mean from a landfill perspective? Translate that, please, into actual data on the emissions, the electricity, the less landfill, but then also in terms of like trees, how many trees would that have saved? How many trees would that have planted? How many cars off the road would that have equated to, etc.? And then using that to portray a really positive message when you do your annual statements, your quarterly results, etc., to build that trust and that relationship with customers, even your internal stakeholders that do have that, self-awareness on the green IT and the overall planet as a whole. So that was a really big driver, especially, when green IT was first really making waves in the 2010s. But nowadays, I think it's more kind of generally expected almost of organizations to think like this and to be a bit more sustainable, think about their impact, think about their carbon footprint, etc. And I think it's just a bad PR now if companies aren't reporting on that and showing, that they're making actions and taking steps to be more sufficient, to be more sustainable, and to really optimize how they are using and emitting these emissions. There are some challenges though that come with green IT, as there is with everything, every new concept that comes into an organization. It's time consuming and it can be expensive to implement initially. So if you've been given that green IT challenge, the goals from an ITAM perspective, and you're looking at, for example, your monitor fleet is a good way of looking at it, your physical infrastructure and data centers, your desktops, if you've got hot desks, for example, looking at the energy efficiency ratings of those, what their outputs are. A lot of time if you don't already have it, a lot of effort, and then actually a lot of cost if you then look at all of your D level energy efficiency ratings and want to move them up to an A. A lot of time, lot of effort. You can use this with your asset management database if you're populating that information already, but yeah, it has been a lot of work for a lot of clients when they have been looking at this and had that directive from the leadership team that they need to do that. It is a lot of time, a lot of effort, but then also you need to factor in the stuff that you are replacing goes to ITAD, and if it's in a good condition, you'll get a lot more money back for it. But time consuming, can be expensive when it starts. And for smaller organisation, it just may not be sustainable. If you're a small organisation with dwindling hardware budgets and dwindling software budgets, having that full green IT focus just might not work. And that's completely fair enough. If you don't have the resources to be able to go out and do this, if you don't have the budgets to be able to go out and do this, then unfortunately, that's not something that's achievable. But what is achievable is then picking away at certain elements, looking at your hardware refresh plans and going, okay, well, monitors is a 7-year life cycle. Let's move that to 5 initially, just so we can start eking out some of these monitors that we're using from an energy standpoint and from an emission standpoint. Let's reduce that so that we can, as time goes on, start to refresh that. That's potentially an option, breaking it up, doing it that way, but Sometimes it just may not be sustainable. It may not be something that a smaller organization can do. Of course, again, when you're looking at it from an IT perspective, you need expertise, you need resources to be able to help make these changes happen. You may need a third-party consultancy to come in. Yeah, Sam Beast Consulting can come in and help with that. But that then is more cost, unfortunately. That's more cost along with all of the hardware changes that you're making to do the analysis, to look at the potential options, maybe even run hardware RFPs for new technologies and looking at the emissions and the electricity and the carbon outlet that they do. Costs money, more expertise required, more resources required, and you haven't even got to the point of physically buying and changing the hardware or moving things to the cloud and third-party data centers. It may also slow down or hinder business goals and objectives. For other things, you may, of course, have green IT sustainability objectives and goals already set out to you, but it can slow other areas down. I've seen this firsthand when there's a bit of a conflict internally where it's, okay, well, we've got to meet this challenge from a sustainability standpoint, but then this project needs to meet their deadlines, and there's an issue on some of the hardware that's being ordered for this project that doesn't quite meet the sustainability and green IT goal, but the project's got the deadlines and the pressure, and it's finding that balance. It's talking to those stakeholders, making sure that they're aware of what you're trying to achieve, from an ITAM standpoint with your green IT sustainability, but then also, important projects, with all the will in the world, if an important project needs to use a dirty hardware, for example, a really bad energy efficiency rating, but it's required for the project, there isn't time to find alternatives. Sometimes you've got to make that grown-up decision, work with the stakeholders and say, okay, well, unfortunately, this doesn't align with our green IT initiatives, but because of the project, the revenue, the money that's going to bring in, the overall change to the organization, you have to take that common sense decision on what's right for the business. And also, sometimes it's not actually that better. It's not that more energy efficient. We mentioned earlier about moving things out of your physical data centers into the cloud. And, that was a really wonderful idea and wonderful concept from a cost and an energy efficiency standpoint. But now, as more people move things to the cloud, those data centers are consuming more energy. They're consuming more resources. They're increasing their costs. They're building new data centers, which is taking up more energy and more costs because, heck, they're not going to pay for creating that data center. How are they going to get the money for building that? Increased costs. Is it cheaper? Is it actually more energy efficient? It may look great from your organization standpoint because you're saying, well, we've got rid of a physical data center. We've removed X amount of servers, which is X amount of carbon emissions, X amount of electricity, kilowatts per hour. But actually, you've just shifted it somewhere else, which may likely be slightly better, but not on the grand scheme that it potentially was thought within the organization. And sometimes as well, like I said before, the energy efficiency matrix seems to be changing all the time. There was a big change a few years ago where something previously was an A is now an F. That could happen again as technology evolves. The things that you're investing in now that you think are an A or a B in the energy consumption matrix or the energy star may actually end up being an F in a few years' time. So then you might have to go through and do it all again. So for some asset types, is it actually worth the effort? You need to consider all of that. The effort versus the reward. If the rewards are great and the effort is great, then it's worth it. If the effort is great and the rewards are minimal, maybe have a think about it, because from an ITAM perspective, I'm sure you've got dwindling budgets, you've got a lack of resources, you've got plenty of other things on your plate. So think about it. If the rewards are great, amazing, do it. If you can fit it into your roadmap, go ahead. If the effort is great but the rewards are less, is it worth it right now, or is it worth holding off for a bit? But we mentioned that the evolution of green IT, and something cool that's really come into the space lately is something called green ops. And very similar to green IT, the aim is to reduce the environmental impact of digital services and infrastructure. Green ops, there's a lot of ops going out at the moment, DevOps, green ops, FinOps, etc. But FinOps and green ops are two ones that really come into ITAM's realm. It comes into our world. It's something that we can really relate to and add value in. This is a large focus then on that cloud computing. As cloud computing has evolved, as data centers have got bigger, consume more energy, they've created more data centers, for example. Green Ops helps focus on that cloud computing, the emissions that are being used. Even if you're outsourcing that to, AWS, there's still emissions that is ultimately the responsibility of your organization because it's your instances. It may be somewhere else, but from a corporate responsibility standpoint, it's still technically for you. So it's something that you should still be considering and factoring in. It's all about reducing those carbon emissions through scaling and right sizing, something we can help with ITAM. All we do is scale and right size on software licenses, software contracts, hardware audits and stuff like that. We can play a key role in doing this as well. Usage, these are all words that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. Reduce wastage through optimization of usage. We do that with our hardware. We do that with our software, and the knock-on effect of this with the relationship with Green Ops is that carbon emissions reduction, that electricity reduction, using clean versus dirty electricity. We can help with all of that. Turning off resources when not needed. We do that in software. If something's not being used, we're reclaiming that license. We're getting that back. We're making sure that it then goes to be used. If hardware's not being used, we're reclaiming it back. We're provisioning to somewhere else that's going to be used. You see, we can do this to support Green Ops. We can do that within the cloud computing space to support not only Green Ops actually, but to support FinOps as well. We can do that. We can play a huge role in that, and so can FinOps as well. We're working with FinOps. Green Ops works closely with FinOps, who works closely with ITAM. It all comes together. We can help massively from an ITAM perspective because there's so many links in between FinOps, ITAM and Green Ops. We're looking at the financial element of right sizing, scaling, tagging, etc. within these cloud environments. But we can then translate that also into how that relates to Green Ops. And it's so exciting from an ITAM standpoint because it gives us even more justification for being in an organization and having our own department and having a seat at the table, because it's just more value that we can add. And Green Ops provides those tools and frameworks to measure and monitor the impact that our IT assets have on the environment. Again, this data can come into our existing tool sets. It can come into the asset management database. We can have on all of our hardware models what the energy efficiency is of that, kilowatts per hour for electricity, carbon emissions. We can have all of that in our asset management database and report on that if we leverage the tools that Green Ops use. Super exciting. More ways that we can evolve as an industry from an ITAM standpoint and really, really make a difference on the sustainability and our planet as well. There's also green software as well, and there's a really good free course actually that I highly recommend from the Green Software Foundation that you can do to learn more about what exactly green software is and again how ITAM can help with that. So green software is looking at how software is designed, developed and created from a carbon emission standpoint. So making sure that it's carbon efficient, so that it's not using as much emissions as it is, previous software was using. And this is throughout its life cycle, right from when you're planning it, developing it, all the way through to when it's being used. It's having that focus on the environmental impacts that the creation of this software and its usage is having. How much resources is that software going to need when a user's running it? What about when multiple users are running it? What if the whole organization is running it? Is it a resource in the cloud? Is it a resource on a server, on a laptop, on a phone, etc.? It's having those considerations in place. It's about using the least amount of energy as possible, less carbon. And again, it goes back to that clean versus dirty electricity usage. So at certain periods, you'll have clean energy. A lot of countries, in fact, have this where houses have their own solar powers, for example, solar panels on their roofs. They're taking all of that sunlight, not in the UK, as I look out and it's grey and horrible, but in other sunnier countries, they're taking that sun, transforming that into energy through the solar panels, and then using that electricity. That's green energy, right? The dirty energy then is when it's not been generated through natural resources, where it's been generated through harmful ways. And I know, countries all over the place are changing that now with wind farms, solar power, etc. Even using things like water, renewable energy sources, so that it makes that electricity cleaner rather than dirty, harmful. It's been created in a way that is harmful for the environment. And green software has a look at when it can use that green energy, the green electricity, to use the actual software. We're also looking at the hardware usage and efficiency, because the software is obviously going to be going on something. It has to. It's, it needs to be a cloud, virtual, physical laptop, server, etc. So how's that leveraging the hardware that it's on? What's the usage on that one? And then also reporting on those carbon emissions of the software. Very similar to the green ops, where we're looking at the cloud computing emissions and hardware emissions. This also then looks at the software emissions that it's pumping out. Green software is a relatively new concept, but like I said, the Green Software Foundation have done a really, really good free course. Highly recommend you go and have a look at it. You learn a lot more about it. You pick up things from that course on how it impacts ITAM and the difference that IT asset management can make in supporting the Green Software Initiative. Now, you probably remember only a few minutes ago I was talking about the energy efficiency rating, and as you can see it on your screen there, this is one that's used in particular in the UK. And whenever you go around a physical shop, I know there's still physical shops. What do you mean you just don't buy everything from Amazon? But even on Amazon, you can see this image for hardware that's, plugs into a socket, for example, to understand how eco-friendly it is. And you can also actually see how much that's probably going to cost you per hour in electricity and how much energy that it actually consumes. This matrix has been around for a very, very long time. Even growing up as a child, I remember seeing this on TVs, monitors, physical desktop computers, etc. This had a big revamp, and the revamp has really kind of changed it up a bit. So this means that previously something that was an A rating is now probably an F or a G. Technology has evolved. The way that we look at carbon emissions, electricity usage, etc. has evolved a lot. So they redid the scale, things got reprioritized, and if you've got an old dishwasher, fridge, freezer, dryer, whatever, have a look at what it was then and compare that to what it is now, because I'm pretty sure you'll see that it was a green and now it's an orange or a red. I'd have experienced recently personally where I changed my dishwasher. On the dishwasher, the sticker itself, it said that it was an A. That was purchased in 2009. When you look at it now, it's a G, and the new one that's come in is now a B on the new scale rating. So that just shows how things have improved and the delta on how we've got a lot cleaner with using our technology. You can review this current asset energy and efficiency ratings within your organization, work with your hardware vendors, get that information, and you can manage it within your asset management database. A lot of AMDBs have the fields where you can manage kilowatts per hour, energy efficiency, carbon emissions, etc., even cost per hour. You could add that in as a custom field if you don't already have it, but the big ones like your ServiceNows, for example, they have that and you can manage that in there. You can then, from an ITAM standpoint, look at replacing any of those high energy assets, kilowatts per hour, with more environmentally friendly and energy efficient models. We mentioned this before. This is where that initial cost outlay comes. But if you've got a really good hardware refresh plan in place already, this can happen naturally. You can look at switching models. What are your current models? What are potentially more energy efficient models that still provide the same service, the same level of spec? How can that be a win for you and ITAM with reducing that energy efficiency? Reducing the number of assets per user as well is another really good way of doing this and how ITAM can help. I mean, to be honest, you're probably already doing audits on this anyway. Users that have 2 desktops, why? Users that have 4 monitors, why? Users that have 2 laptops, why? Users that have more than a laptop and a MacBook, why? Doing all of these kind of audits, you're probably already looking at that from an ITAM perspective already, but actually taking away those physical assets and having users only having a primary device helps with this a lot as well. And you can factor that in. If you're managing that within your asset management database, you can factor that in as part of your audit and your KPIs and how you're reporting ITAM success to senior management, not only on the cost that you've avoided in buying a new one, how many assets you've recovered, but then also because you've recovered that one from a user that had more than one and giving it out to a new starter, what kind of impact that has on your green IT initiatives and how that impacts on kilowatts per hour, how that impacts on your carbon emissions, etc. You can add that all into your reporting pack. You could also have a look at migrating physical servers to the cloud and then decommissioning and retiring the physical hardware. This was a common trait that has been happening over the last 5, 6, 7 years with people moving into the cloud. But please, if you are looking into this, you may have really bad servers that are old and legacy from an energy efficiency standpoint. And it is a big jump if you move into the cloud in terms of what the relationship on the energy efficiency would be. But please just be mindful that it might not be as good as you're expecting it to be. And also, please remember that you are not actually outsourcing all of that responsibility. Yes, you're paying for something somewhere else. Yes, it's in the cloud. Yes, it's virtual. Yes, your organization does not have that physical data center anymore, those physical emissions, but it's still your instances somewhere else. So when you're doing your reporting, you need to still factor in the energy efficiency, the carbon emissions, and the sustainability of moving things into the cloud when you're doing your reporting, because you haven't totally gotten rid of that. And the amount of organizations I see that totally forget that and report that they have got rid of all of the data centers and they are carbon neutral, whatever. You're not, because you've moved things over here. Yes, it's not in your physical space, but it's still your environment and you're still using resources that are in a data center. You still need to take the responsibility for the outputs of that and track that and report on it as well. And get your end-of-life processes mature and effective. Like we said, that can actually unlock a lot of issues that people have with energy efficiency. Maybe, your monitor lifespan, like we said, is 7 years and you've got really bad ones. Maybe reduce that to 5 and start refreshing them more frequently until you get them all up to a good standard of energy efficiency. Maybe even sweat some assets if that's something that you can be doing, but just making sure you've got your end of life process in place, your hardware refresh planning, your retrieving of old equipment, and your IT asset disposition and retirement processes. And that naturally has a knock-on effect, on a positive knock-on effect on your green IT goals and your sustainability goals as well. So one of my most favorite elements of green IT and how we can support that is the hardware sustainability. So making sure you've got those processes in place to fully utilize your hardware throughout its life cycle. So I'm making sure that you've got your usage audits in there, that you've got your repairs processes in there. Is it worth repairing from an environmental and from a cost standpoint? You've got your end of life processes there, and also going back, you've got your onboarding processes there, so that when you do onboard a new model, you can track how that is from an energy and a consumption standpoint. You're already getting the financials. You may as well get that information as well. Put it in your asset management database from day one. Making sure you've got those hardware refresh plans and those cycles. We've already covered that bit, but super important for sustainability. Re-evaluating your internal retirement dates. Can you sweat assets more? Could a laptop go from a 3 to a 4 year life cycle? Could your Mac environment go from a 3 to a 5 year or a 4 to a 5 year? Could your monitors go from a 5 to a 7 year? Things like that. If it works out from a financial and a sustainability standpoint, have a look at it. It could be a really good win for you. It may not be because you're already going through the hardware refresh planning, but if you're not, it could be a really good win for you. Does your hardware need to be on 24/7? If not, turn it off. It's such low-hanging fruit in the FinOps and GreenOps space from an ITAM standpoint. Go in, look at your consumption of your cloud resources. First of all, go, well, that one's not being used from the hours of 7 p.m. till 6 a.m. Turn it off. Save money. Save emissions. Be the hero. Easy. You can do that for your physical hardware as well. Why are people leaving monitors on when they leave the office? Don't need it. Turn it off. Get it off. Make them physically come in and turn it on again. Hot desks, they don't need to be running all the time. Turn them off when someone leaves. Turn them back on when they come in. There's so many things that you can turn off and turn back on again. Obviously, don't turn off servers and network equipment and storage arrays and stuff like that, because that would be a pain. But from anything that can be turned off that isn't used or isn't relied upon overnight, why not turning it off? You could save money in so many places by doing that. Have a look, see what you can achieve on that one. Yeah, the legacy servers in particular and infrastructure kit, they are the ones that consume a lot of energy. So if they're on your hardware refresh planning for next year and you've got the budget, maybe move that forward a bit. Obviously work with your IT asset type owners on that, but they might be, one of the bad areas that you can improve upon. They could be, a prime candidate for an early hardware refresh to take the energy efficiency rating from an F to an A if you're keeping your physical infrastructure in place. So I think that's a really good way of having a look at, being more sustainable on the hardware standpoint. And of course, open goal, everybody should be doing this ITAD. IET asset disposition, if you're not already doing ITAD, you need to start doing ITAD from a saving standpoint, making money from that equipment at your end of life, from your corporate responsibility in making sure that harmful materials don't go to landfill, and also from your corporate responsibility in making sure that equipment and materials within your assets gets recycled. So on a software sustainability standpoint as well, like I said, I really urge you to have a look at the Green Software Foundation, understand the basics on what green software is, what software sustainability is, and what that means for your organization. You can then, once you understand the core concept, start gathering data on your software's usage, carbon and energy emissions. Gives you more ammo in order to make changes, very like we do with the internal audits. We get the ammo on how much people are using software. They're not using it, we're reclaiming it. You can do that with the energy efficiency and carbon emissions as well. Look at modifying your existing processes or creating new ones with green software and sustainability in mind. This is, again, a really good way to do that culture change and start getting people thinking about green software. And if you start gently incorporating that into your processes and your ITAM policies, etc., and working with them on that culture change, like with everything else, it just becomes second nature once people are used to doing it. We've got that close relationship with green ops and FinOps to make sure that things are right sized, that things are used correctly, that when they're not being used, we're turning them off, etc. Right sizing as well is when, sorry, I should have explained that, is when you're looking at an instance and saying that it's got the right spec. Basically, it's got the right number of cores, the right operating system level, processes, usage, how you've built it is right for the job that it's doing. A lot of times you'll find that it might be over-spec'd. You can change that, right size it, save some money, save the planet. So yeah, definitely work closely with your FinOps and GreenOps teams. If you don't have GreenOps and FinOps, someone somewhere is going to have this on their radar. So I highly recommend that you go and find out who that is. And just do a bit of education and awareness, do some webinars, do some sessions on what green software is, what software sustainability is, how they all play a key role in supporting your initiatives with green software and green ops as well. You know, every user is a customer of this. Every user plays a key role in reducing consumption, reducing emissions, reducing the amount of electricity that's being used. So work with them on that. I'm sure they already are thinking about that from a personal standpoint, but you can work with them to think about it from a corporate standpoint as well. And then that will all help with the overall goals of the organization on their sustainability and green IT as well. That will help you from an ITAM standpoint, and that will help everyone. No such thing as over communication. Get talking, get doing those webinars, get people aware of what all of this actually means for them and how they can play a key role in fixing that. I've banged on about it already why you need to be doing this, but ITAD is really a big part of being able to support this. Making sure that your processes result in hardware optimization. So this is making sure that come the end of life, you can still optimize that hardware. You can recycle components. You can get money back for it at the end of its life. And if you're recycling it through reselling it, which is still recycling because someone else is having it, it's not going to landfill. It's not going to, the great hardware heaven in the sky. It's still being reused. It's being recycled and you're getting some money back for it. Or the components of it are being recycled or dealt with in the appropriate way for the harmful ones. You can make sure and change your strategy so that assets are not being just disposed of and got rid of for minor issues. There are things that you can replace to sweat the asset, to keep the asset going. If there's nothing else wrong with it and it's just got a duff battery, and you can replace the battery, it's like £20-30. Replace the battery. That asset could then potentially live on for 2 more years. If the keyboard's broken, you've got another device that's ready for ITAD, but it's got a decent keyboard. Switch it out. Be more sustainable. Use components from other assets to make sure that an asset that's still got years left of life can still be used. That helps massively. Have your robust ITAD process. I've said this so many times, but I will say it again. Make sure you've got that process in place. Make sure you're getting your ITAD certificates, your data destruction references, your recycling references, making sure you're getting your disposal certificates as well, and also any resale certificates so that you can prove that from an organization standpoint, you are doing your bit. You can donate equipment wherever possible to charities, local schools, local initiatives, etc. That's really good from a PR standpoint, but also really good from a sustainability and green IT standpoint. Make sure you've got waivers in place that if you do donate anything, that you no longer take responsibility for it. You do not want the people that you've donated it to be constantly calling you up for tech support or because it's broken, expecting more, etc. So yeah, definitely have some waivers, some legal stuff in place that when you do donate equipment that you're no longer responsible for it. Horror stories left, right and centre about this, where schools have then rung up the people that have donated the hardware, saying that it's broken, you need to replace it, it needs a new battery, and no, there should be no legal obligation once you donate the hardware. And then, of course, if the assets cannot be reused, resold, or stripped for parts, then those damaging, environmentally hazardous materials within the electronic equipment is disposed of or recycled or just dealt with following your local regulations and laws and environmental regulations and laws as well. Your ITAD provider will do this and they will provide proof that they have done this as well. So green software support, we can also help with this one on visibility and reporting, software usage, which software and cloud instances drives that high cloud computing, and which legacy software contributes to that high amount of energy being used. What could be replaced? What can we look at replacing with more energy efficient software? Optimization, right sizing. I said this again and again, and I'll keep saying it. Remove things that's not being used. Right size things that's overspec'd. Turn things off that aren't being used. Turn things off at certain periods when they're not being used. Open goals, low hanging fruit. Go do it. It makes a big difference. And then you could also start talking to your software vendors and your managed service providers on what's their green IT approach? What's their green software approach? Do they follow any green software methodologies? If so, can they prove it? Have a look at ESG and sustainability and green software, green IT, green ops, everything green. When you're onboarding new vendors as well, find out before you even engage with them and build that relationship on what they're doing, what their corporate social responsibility is as well. Making sure that you understand that it might work with you, and great, let's build a fantastic relationship because you have the same goals and objectives as us from a green standpoint. If they don't align with you, then maybe they're not the right software vendor for you. Just saying. So yeah, ask those questions when you're onboarding new vendors. You can even ask this question of your existing vendors. It shows you're being proactive and thinking about these kind of things. The future for green IT, green ops, software and ITAM is very exciting. From an ITAM perspective, our scope will evolve. It will take in things like green ops and FinOps and green software. From a controls, processes, initiatives standpoint, we can play a key role in that. We can help a lot with that. Can support in the data gathering, data analysis, in conjunction with GreenOps and FinOps, using all of their tools, using our tools from an ITAM perspective to build that overall view, that transparent view, and make really good informed decisions on how this impacts the organization so that you not only support the green initiatives, but you can also save money as well. We can support company-wide objectives and goals, which we're kind of already doing from a green IT standpoint. We can support green ops as well, green software, because we're ITAM. We do hardware, we do software, we do cloud. We have that knowledge, we have that data, we have that expertise and experience. We can help with all of that as well, which is super exciting. And we always love new tools. We love getting our hands on new data sets, and we can do that with the green ops tools that are out there that show the carbon emissions, electricity consumption, etc. We can get that data. We can create APIs even in filtering that information into the AMDB, even on a per asset type, on a per model type, so that we can start looking at all of that, crunching the numbers, doing our analysis and seeing where that we can add value and improve things for the organization. And we can use our existing processes and, like we said in the previous slide, start modifying them, start evolving them, start maturing them to think about FinOps, GreenOps and green software methodologies, just making things even better, even more mature, even more sustainable. You like what I did there? Even more sustainable, and thinking about ultimately our planet, our environment that we all live on, and how we can do our bit to make things a bit better and, you know, use less emissions from an organization standpoint. I mentioned it a few slides back, but please be aware of something called greenwashing. Greenwashing is where companies falsely or inaccurately claim or promote their results, products or services as being more environmentally friendly than they are. The Green Pixie, these guys did an amazing course all about green ops, and this is where I actually learned about greenwashing. I wasn't familiar with it beforehand. So this is when organizations are doing those misleading claims about their actual energy efficiency. The use of any environmentally friendly materials may be overplaying just how environmentally friendly the materials and stuff that they're using actually is. What we said before, they've moved physical data centers to the cloud and then reporting incorrect green data sets, aka we've removed this whole data center into the cloud, therefore it basically they're just wiping off all of the emissions from that particular data center, when what they should be doing is taking the emissions from their new cloud infrastructure and looking at the delta and differences between that and reporting on that. Bad and unclear ITAD process and end of life. They're not using ITAD providers. They're not getting the certification to prove that things have been recycled, data has been destroyed, that the harmful materials have been dealt with in the correct way. From an audit standpoint, this is a big red flag. Whenever I go into an organization and I say, how's your ITAD process? And they look at you and go, huh? You know that there's trouble. You know that something's not right, or oh yeah, this company just comes and picks it up, they do it for free, they get the equipment, and what they do with it is up to them. Red flag. So making sure you've got really good, mature, robust ITAD processes in place and practices is really important, and also helps not greenwashing, and not thinking overall about the carbon footprint when outsourcing products or services. Like with the cloud stuff, if you're outsourcing other services or products that you used to do in-house, you can't then report that you've completely eradicated that output or that carbon footprint or those emissions, because you've outsourced the job to somewhere else, but someone else is then doing it. So you need, like with the cloud stuff, you need to factor in what it used to be and what your new emissions are now that you've outsourced it, and report on that delta, report on that difference, but don't say that you have no carbon footprint for those services or those products anymore, because that's not true. You can outsource the jobs, but you can't outsource the responsibility. Like we used to say with software licensing, you can outsource the, managing all of the compliance and doing the ELPs and stuff like that. You can't outsource the responsibility of not being compliant. You can't outsource the risk. That will always stay within an organization. And that's exactly the same when it comes to reporting on your green emissions. So in conclusion, it is a super exciting time for ITAM to evolve, learn, grow, and even add more value. ITAM is really a great place and a great supporter of all of these initiatives. It's everyone within an organization's responsibility to have a green focus. We play a huge role in supporting green IT and sustainability initiatives. We've got the expertise, we've got the experience, we've got the data. We can help with that. You can start with those baby steps, look at usage monitoring, standard ITAM optimization of hardware and software assets. Just the baby steps will help towards those initiatives. And finally, if you've learned anything from this, it's that ITAD plays a huge role in this as well. Making sure that you're disposing and dealing with that end-of-life physical hardware equipment in the right way plays a huge role in supporting all of this anyway. Getting those reports from your ITAD provider, reporting on those reports, it's mega, it's huge, it's such a big part of ITAM. You should be doing it. You should be really focusing, giving the attention it deserves and needs, because ITAD is just a massive win all around if you're not doing it. And on that, I really hope that you've learned something or found it useful. There's some excellent resources out there. Like I said, the Green Software Foundation, Green Pixie as well, did some really good courses, and they've got a great website as well. I'll put links to both of those in the description. But hopefully I've given you some food for thought as always. If one person has got food for thought from this, then I'll be happy. Please make sure you like and don't forget to subscribe. We've got a lot more ITAM content coming out. I'd hate for you to miss out on that. Have a lovely week, and until next time, happy ITAMing.